back to the K-Cup, episode 18. We're on part 3 of the 5-part series, The Business of Being a General Contractor. And we're talking about the pre-construction phase in part 3. So we're moving right along. We're still not quite there to building something, but we're taking care of some serious logistics today. So let's go ahead and get into that, John. We're going to talk about, what everyone loves to talk about when they're a builder. That's the permitting process. So let's just dive right in and tell us a little bit about the permitting process. Maybe you can kind of, show the contrast between, the public bid situation, how the permitting process is handled there versus what we really prefer to do, which is the design build, private work side of things. And just tell us about how that goes and some of your experiences with it.
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, the permitting is it falls a little bit outside the general contractor. I know that we really like the design build, type projects, or even just collaborative, where we're working with maybe an owner's architect or whatever.
Yeah.
So we do get to dabble in this permitting process a little bit. But I mean, largely we lean on our architects and engineers, to make sure code's being met, to make sure a lot of the general stuff is being met.
Yeah.
And we, the way we do it here in our methods is, we'll hire the architect, and that kind of comes their portion of the project. Outside design, they're also taking care of securing a permit, and getting all that ready. Now, there are times where, maybe we're working with an architect that's from out of town. I can think of recently a project that we had where, the owner had kind of an outside architect, and brought them in. They wasn't real familiar with with East Baton Rouge, and we kind of became the go-between and really kind of got involved a lot more than we typically do.
Yeah.
In getting the permit and, getting all the documents submitted, whether it's fire marshal and all the other things that came along with it.
Yeah.
Can be quite a little tedious process. But typically, here in our company, we lean heavily on our architects to kind of take care of that initial permitting phase, if you will.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about the difference between public work and private work and how the permitting thing affects, how you roll out a project.
Yeah. So generally speaking, on public work, everything has been submitted prior to, or basically we just dropping off a big lump sum set of plans and stuff that's ready to go.
Yeah.
And at that point, we just paying for the permit. Where it becomes different on this side is we're kind of going through the whole process, the whole lengthy, submittals from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Maybe even as early as like planning and commission, to where, you're just getting the site approved for this type of work.
Yeah.
So that would be the big differences. The public side, we're not real involved in the permitting process. We're basically paying for the permit.
Yeah.
If we want to call it a design build or just a collaborative effort where we're working with an individual and an owner and architect, then we may be more involved in the process, and which means that the project's probably going to start later down the road. I mean, a public bid job, we typically start in those things fairly quick.
Yeah.
Where, if you're going through the whole, specifically if you're starting at the zoning process, it can be a number of months before, this project's actually ready to kick off for construction.
Yeah. So that's a heads up to anyone watching this that, wants to potentially be a contractor, is that private side work does have a lot of upside for the contractor. But this is one of those few areas where it can actually be a challenge, and it can be a big delay in revenue add, because that project may not kick off for months, depending on how hard it is to get a permit for the project. So that's something you definitely want to be planning ahead for when you're working on your schedule during this phase of planning for the job and everything. So what do you do as far as talking to the project owner and then dealing with subs and explaining all this stuff as far as scheduling goes?
Well, to your point that you were making, one positive about the kind of process that this takes, on the private side of things, is you can really kind of start to understand your workload or your pipeline. If you have a few of these going, then when
Mhm.
3 to 6 months or whatever it is,
Yeah.
that you have a couple of projects that are going to hit, and you can really start to understand your pipeline.
Yeah.
To where if you're just primarily a public contractor, you almost never know. Like you're just waiting on the next private job to hit. So
Yeah.
while that kind of is a negative, it's also a positive somewhat.
Yeah.
Uh,
You get to do a little planning.
yeah, and as far as the question was, how do we relay this to the project owner?
Yeah, and the subs, I mean, you got to kind of coordinate all that because you don't really know when it's going to start,
Yeah,
so to speak.
so we definitely subs and owners can get a little antsy during
Yeah.
this process because typically, the owner's ready for the project to get going, and the subs likewise, since you've kind of brought them in and hooked their interest. They want to know when this job's going to start.
Yeah.
So there definitely are a lot of emails back and forth, between the owner and us, and even subs saying, "Hey, what's the status of this project? Where we're at?"
Yeah.
So I mean, the best thing that we can try to do in the beginning is just set the expectation for
That's it. Yeah.
how long this is going to take. I mean, that can be a challenge to do.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're working with an architect that's very familiar with what the parish needs or what that entity needs, then it may go a little smoother, a little quicker.
Yeah.
If you're working with a new architect, I mean, it may be multiple submissions. It could take some time.
Yeah.
But the easiest thing that we can do, or the best thing that we can do, is try to set the expectation in the beginning,
Hmm.
but also in a sense to really almost like, we don't know exactly. Like,
Yeah.
we can give you historically it's taken this long,
Yeah.
but just kind of set the expectation. And then the biggest thing is just communicate. If you're communicating consistently, I think that goes a long way.
Yeah. So, have you had any common, challenges that, well, maybe common in that they've popped up more than once that you kind of keep an eye open for when it comes to the permitting process?
Yeah, I mean, from a contractor standpoint, the biggest one is kind of what I just alluded to, just nailing down a time frame. Like
Yeah.
they want to know how long it's going to take for their permit to be ready,
Yeah.
and that can be hard to predict.
Yeah.
So from a contractor standpoint, I would say that that's one of the biggest issues that I see. As far as from an architectural standpoint or engineer, I'm sure they could point out a bunch of key areas that you kind of get snagged on.
Yeah.
Uh, but right off the top of my head, I would just kind of be throwing some stuff out there.
Yeah. Yeah, they probably deal with setbacks, height restrictions, ADA compliance,
Right.
different things like that in the design that we don't
Yeah.
have to mess with.
Well, I mean, even stuff that I can think of that we faced, on recent projects is just the way that the driveway actually hits the highway.
Parking, yeah, stuff like that.
There's different codes and different things that dictate
Access.
that,
Hmm.
and how you cut your curbs and different stuff. So I'm sure I'm sure all those are sticking points.
Yeah, for sure.
And I know there's tons of variances out there. So there's variances because there's usually problems that can't be solved by code or whatever. So
Yeah,
I'm sure there's
imagine that.
lots of little things out there that could be talked about here.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Well, let's move on from the drudgery of pulling permits and move into our next area, which is very important, particularly in South Central Louisiana. We're dealing with site prep and soil testing. So, the first point we want to talk about is, when is site prep or site testing, soil testing rather, is it required or just recommended? Like, what would be the variance there when you just really want to have it, or you're not concerned with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot goes into that, really. If you've done some work on some sites that are right next door to this site or whatever, I mean, you may be comfortable saying, we know what the dirt is here. We can expect it to be this. I mean, I think general rule of thumb for us is if it's a new project, a new development, like we want to see some kind of soil testing. We want to see
Yeah,
the site that we're working on. We want to
for
see,
sure.
what it is that we're dealing with. I think generally speaking, too, if there's engineers involved, they're going to want to know that so they can design properly.
Yeah,
So I mean, I think the quick and short, easy answer to that is just general rule of thumb. Like let's get a soil report.
yeah,
At the end of the day, it's good insurance to make sure that you're designing, according to what the site's being built on.
yeah. Sounds like money well spent. So imagine, you've done your soil testing and you got the green light to start prepping the site, and you run into something unexpected. What's kind of the process there for dealing with that? Do you just don't tell anybody and go ahead and get get your bond beams in and everything and go ahead and get your concrete poured, or do you do something else?
Yeah, I mean, what we would do, we would send an RFI to, the engineer that we're working with, or you know, architect that we're working with, and explain the scenario.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, I mean, we have a really good site guy that we do a bunch of work with. I mean, he's been doing this for years and years, ton of experience.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, we kind of submit a plan of action, and they look at it and approve it and say, let's do it. And
Mm-hmm.
if they have any comments, they make them. But generally, that's the way we move forward. But we certainly want to, for the record, make note of it,
Yeah.
have an RFI out there, have a plan moving forward that everybody's kind of agreed upon.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, our site guys can offer a lot of insight and give a lot of good advice in those areas. And likewise, I mean, engineers have some good plans too to mitigate those type of situations.
Sure. Yeah, it's probably a combination of the two that can really come to a solution. And so the point is like if you're working on site prep and you come in run into a problem, don't just try to cover it over or gloss over it. You definitely want to address it, because those things can come back and bite you.
Right.
For sure. The soil affects the foundation. Foundation affects the whole building. So it could just snowball on you and turn into a big problem. So definitely an area where you want to be diligent in. And of course, understanding these soil reports, I know that's probably one of those things where you may not fully understand all the the aspects of testing, but you understand the results over time. If you look enough of them and you see the results, what results fall within acceptable parameters. And of course, the soil reports typically indicate that. They'll tell you.
Yeah, they dictate. They have a really good, a really good way of dictating what needs to happen. I mean, they make recommendations.
Prescribe it.
Yeah, how things should be done.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to your point, you may not understand all the specifics when it comes to the types of soil and that kind of thing, but if you've seen some soil reports, they give some really good direction on how to proceed and what action should be taken for different parts of the project.
Yeah. The reports are usually pretty thorough and pretty informative. So that's pretty, like you said, easy to start seeing patterns over time and interpret them fairly well. So as far as budgeting, how do you plan for potentially having a soil issue once you start construction? Because sounds like it could be costly.
Yeah, I mean, in the private world and in the negotiated projects, we always start those projects off with a known contingency to the owner. That's a dollar value, kind of based on the size of the job or the type of the job. We may have another contingency, but
yeah,
we always start our projects off with a contingency that's kind of a known number.
So that's a fund for dealing with a problem.
Yeah, it can go for any problem, including soil. I mean, soil would be one of the first ones that pop up. So you'd be using your contingency early. But if the site conditions are iffy, then obviously we're going to be pointing that out in the beginning, that we could potentially run into some issues and maybe have a specific contingency just for that.
Yes.
But that's the way we'd handle it. I mean, honestly, in the public world, it's a lot different. I mean, you can't have you're not going to be very competitive with a bunch of contingencies in there.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's almost like, even if there's probably going to be an issue, you kind of have to wait till it arises and kind of address it at that point.
Yeah, try to do a change order or something like that.
Yeah, but when we can help it, we want to get those situations out there and have those contingencies up front.
Yeah.
And understood.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, there you go. That's some key points for site prep and soil testing. Definitely something that you want to do, particularly on the commercial side of things. The projects can get pretty costly, so you want to take that. It's cheap insurance, and definitely get that done. So let's go ahead and move into our last section here on pre-construction, and that is we're coming back to the subcontractor thing again. We know that when we were building the raw budget and early on in the process of trying to take this lead that's now becoming a potential client, and we're trying to put together a rough budget, we've consulted with some subs that we like to work with, and we've gotten numbers from them, some raw numbers and stuff. But now it's time to actually start thinking about contracts and issuing contracts and nailing these things down. So what's the process for that as far as deciding on who you're going to use, why you're going to use them, and then what is left as far as vetting is concerned at this point.
Yeah, I mean, so I think at this point of the or this point in the process, we probably already know who we're going to use. For most of the subcontractors,
Yeah.
specifically, the larger scopes. We've already had those guys involved in the process. We've already had them submitting budgets and those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
So we already know kind of who we're going to use. And I mean, I think the vetting process would have happened through the years. Like we're not using new contractors on a project like this that we're negotiating, that we're working on. We're using somebody that we already have a relationship with, somebody that we've already trusted.
Yeah.
So we know that after working with this company for a number of years, they're going to be able to handle this project in a good way. So that's kind of how the vetting would have happened. And as far as actually choosing the contractor and locking in, I mean, we would have looked at things like, is this type of project good for that subcontractor?
Yeah.
We work with these subs all the time, so we understand their workload.
Yeah.
Like, is this a project they can actually fit in their schedule?
Yeah.
So we use those kind of things to determine, who we bring in to help start budgeting and start working on these projects. And then ultimately, the guys that were, willing to take part are typically the ones that get the job and kind of move forward from there.
Yeah. So when it comes to, private work, like we talked about earlier with permitting and stuff like that, you're at this point now we're trying to put together final schedule, stuff like that. And how do you manage that? Like we want our subcontractors to, obviously we want to make sure that their final number is going to fit in with the design, because we've been doing that all through the process. And now we have to schedule all this as well. So how do we coordinate, their final numbers fitting with the budget, and then getting this scheduling worked out and coordinating with the project owner and getting this thing rolling?
So after we've kind of created that budget in the beginning, with our subs, we typically have a meeting with, the architectural team, the subs, and even the engineers if possible.
Okay.
And kind of, explain to the engineers and architects, how was this budget derived? Like, if you look at the mechanical scope, like what were we using? Were we using, rooftop units? Were we using split systems? Were we using mini splits? How do we come up with this budget?
Getting some details now.
Yeah, so that the engineer can design around the idea and the budget that we already have.
Yeah.
In lieu of just turning them loose and then us having to reprice it and it not being anything close to, to what we kind of were thinking.
Yeah. Do we take a last look at value engineering at this point?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times if the sub's kind of involved in the beginning, that's almost the value engineered part of it, because they don't really over design it. They kind of design it according to the way they're used to doing things in the field, and things that's worked,
something that's going to
got
meet
a track
the
record of working,
Yeah.
but also meets all the requirements as far as code and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that's kind of what we do when we bring that sub in the early phases. We kind of value engineered at that point.
I got you.
To get the best product for the best cost.
I got you. Okay. Well, that sounds good. So hope you've enjoyed this. This is part 3 of our 5-part series on the business of being a general contractor. And this was the pre-construction phase. So our next step forward is we're going to actually get to build something. Now that we've done, the first 3 parts just dealing with administration and logistics, we're going to finally get to actually get out there and get to the site and start breaking ground. So come on back and check out episode, I think we're going to be 19 for part 4 of the 5-part series of business of being a general contractor. And please, if you're watching this or listening to this, please take 2 seconds and hit that subscribe button. It helps us get our information pushed out to more listeners. The more people that subscribe, the more YouTube is going to push this out into other people's feeds where they get the opportunity to discover the K-Cup. And we want to start building this community around our industry, the commercial construction industry, and all the different related industries that includes, like commercial real estate, commercial lending, architecture, engineering, and so forth. So please help us get the word out with the K-Cup. And we want to continue to grow this podcast and bring value to y'all every week. So any parting shots for everybody, John?
No, I'm ready for episode 19. I want to build something.
All right.
Let's go build something.
Sounds good. We're going to get our bags on. We'll be right back. Adios.
Adios.
Vaya con Dios.
I don't know what that means.
Cut.